Welcome to the Ask Dr. Be Good podcast, where we bring you the positive things that are happening in public education today. And so one of the very positive things that we have going on at Legacy is the focus that we have not only on cultural awareness, but on the awareness of self and helping our scholars understand self better. And we do that with some special people who have taken the time to work with our scholars before, during school and after school to make sure that our young people feel like there are people who care about them and their futures. And so I will start with going around the room and having everyone introduce themselves. So Alec, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Alex Sebastian Fletcher, and I attend Legacy Preparatory in Plano. And I'm a 9th grade student. And I actually know both of these wonderful people because Miss Ferguson is the nurse, and Professor Freedom is was one of my teachers in a program. So, yeah.
All right, super. Thank you.
My name is Bria, and I've been at Legacy for 5 years, since 3rd grade. I know Miss Ferguson because she's obviously the nurse, and she's helped me when I'm hurt or something. And I know Dr. Professor, because my brother goes to his program.
You?
Hi, I'm Cynthia Ferguson, and I am the school medic at Plano, and I'm also the Wolfitz Girls Group leader, their sponsor.
Hello, I am Dominic Wallace. I know one of these wonderful people, but I haven't met the other one. She's obviously a wonderful nurse, as I can tell from 2 scholars. I know Professor Freedom from the program that I was attending, and I know Dr. Be Good because I watch one of her podcasts.
Thank you for that.
I'm Professor Freedom, and I know everyone here, and I've been with Legacy about 6-7 years now. And in the early days, and Dr. Good and I worked at Dallas Independent School District together, and been very, very excited about her and her work here. And we work in a number of areas with diversity and a gentleman's program and any other thing they call me to do.
So let's sort of go back in time. We opened up in 3 schools in 2012. One was in Mesquite, one was in Dallas, and one was in Richardson. And I was principal over the Plano and Mesquite while being superintendent. So I was in the field. I was there. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat is that we had African American young men in our office in too high of a numbers. And so I called Professor Freedom and I said, you need to help me. You need to help me train my staff because we're not doing a good job with our kids. And so that's how it began. You not only worked with cultural awareness and behavior awareness with our staff, but you also then did after-school mentoring with our kids.
Yes.
And so can you talk a little bit about that? Well, first, you made me do something. What did you make me do?
Well, in my career, both at SMU and DISD, I have worked in the area of cultural diversity, and whenever I work with other agencies, I always ask about 3 things. And those 3 things are, do you have a philosophy? Do you have a policy? And then are there good practices?
Around
Cultural diversity. And so I reviewed the district's policy manual. I went through it extensively and suggested to you that that the district should have a district culture philosophy. And we drafted that particular philosophy that is now posted in the schools very visibly, as well as training the teachers and staff and implementing it in the programs.
We review it every year. A matter of fact, I want you to know that those big posters that we have, I took that and our mission and vision down to Houston last week. We had the Texas Charter School Conference, and we were doing a recruitment session that we'd been asked to present. And that was part of it. Our recruitment of international teachers helps fulfill some of our cultural philosophy. So, Dominic, you want to read that cultural philosophy? Here, in the mic, please.
Okay. It is the philosophy of Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy that every educator and scholar's culture, parentheses, history, language,
Dialect.
dialect, family values, music, food, and customs. It is important to achieving academic success. Success, scholars' self-image, motivation, and academic achievements are all affected to the extent that Legacy works to include scholar cultures in their education. Educators are expected to be committed to multicultural pedagogy and perspectives that will be practiced in lessons, activities, and projects. Multicultural pedagogy and perspectives will have an important emphasis in all subjects at all grade levels in the entire district, schools, and community environments.
Pretty good for not having had to read it before. Whew, good job. So that states our commitment to cultural awareness, diversity. There's lots of different terms around it, but what that says is that Legacy is committed to not only integrating it as an awareness piece and a philosophy, but it's expected to be embedded in the content of their classrooms as well and in other practices. And so I believe that we're getting better at doing that. I believe also we're one of the few districts in Texas that has a cultural philosophy. Matter of fact, there was a man in the audience who came up to us afterwards. His job is cultural diversity up in Washington, D.C., and he commended us on it, and he took your name, and so he may be calling you. But so first of all, we do have that, but you can't just have a poster up on the wall. And so, Professor Freedom, let's talk a little bit about how does that cultural philosophy play out at Legacy, and how has it gone, from 6 years ago to now? How's it developed?
Well, certainly from the top down, because you have been committed to it as the superintendent, and certainly the board embraces it because they've had to approve all that you do. Then from there, we engaged in an extensive education process, and in the philosophy, we say education comes from the word edus, educator, which means to pull out the best. So, particularly in our world today, given the diversity of our student populations, our staff populations, that it is no longer something that you would do on the side. It's reality. So how do you understand the various cultures, the backgrounds, the languages, the dialects, the value systems? And we trained the educators or the facilitators in the district for a number of years. And we have built capacity, because what I have noticed now that there are educators who we have trained who are now leading new educators. And that's really a great sign.
Well, I noticed recently that we're one of the few districts in the North Texas area that whose staff is predominantly minority. Normally it's still predominantly white, female, but we are not only predominantly minority staff, but we have a high percentage of males that work for us. So we're able to bring and better reflect our population. So, all right. So, since I don't know that we've really talked about what you actually do. You've talked about training teachers.
Training teachers, and then also we started with our after-school programs where we work with students. It's been quite interesting because we have worked with from kindergarten up to 8th grade, and also with the PTO and with the educators. And so it's been interesting because one year at least I requested that we can work with some upper class a little bit, and we found that the parents really, might say, protested a little bit, say, I want the younger children to continue to have this program. And we went back to that model, and we are at that model stage now, where we have from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. And in those sessions, we cover basically 4 things: culture, character, citizenship, and cognition, shall I say.
Developing the brain.
We begin with the brain because we talk about taking the chains off your brain so your mind can work. And we are students learning about dendrites and synapses. And I mean, they literally take these things home. We make brain models and we talk about the dendrites, and we make rhythm and rhyme, dendrites, the more you burn, dendrites, the more we learn. And so these are things that they take home with them because rhythm and rhyme is the way students learn. That's why we start learning in kindergarten. That's why they're so important. So we want to take this over into the upper class students as well.
So, Dominic, what does that look like as a student in Professor Freedom's class?
It's very amazing because at first I didn't know what a dendrite was. I didn't even know they were in our brains. I didn't even know they burned. I didn't know anything was going on in my brain. I just knew stuff was coming in and out. And again, when I was learning in this class, what he said about changing your character, I learned how to. I learned how to act different. Like my posture, I'm sitting up, not relaxing back in the chair more often. And he's also talked about character. My character has built up to talk as a gentleman and how to act like a gentleman, think like a gentleman, and look at a person's perspective as a gentleman, which I have learned from him in his gentleman's club.
Have your parents noticed a difference?
Gotta ask them.
I bet they have. I bet they have. Well, that's quite amazing. Wow. Okay, so let's go over here, Alec. You are at the Plano. So Dominic was Mesquite, and you're at the Plano building with doing similar things. So talk a little bit about your experience.
If I may share a little backstory, I personally don't have a father, so there's a lack of a male influence. And so that's why Professor Freedom's classes and programs were good, because they influenced something that was lacking, especially how to be a gentleman, how to be a leader, which I've taken quite into account now that I am trying to get involved in student government and all these other leader and executive roles in other clubs. And yeah, and it showed me to think of things differently than I did before, especially like, I'm sorry, Dominic had said about like thinking like a gentleman and thinking how to do things the right way, how it should be. And just set a good example for younger people.
Okay, well, that's sort of correlates with some of the research that says that many of our children who sometimes are considered at risk, you might be labeled at risk because you come from a single parent home, but when they make it and people say, why did you make it and your buddy didn't with the same risk, it almost always is because there was an adult who took an interest in the child and made sure that that child was guided in the right direction. And it sounds like some of that's going on. And it's not always just one adult, but a series of adults who, within your early life, and when I say early life, I mean into your 20s, had an influence on you in a positive way, and made you feel reluctant to go to the dark side, right?
Yeah.
Because there's too much, accountability to people who care about you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I every time I see Professor Freedom, I always appreciate, what he's done. I always thank him. We always exchange a little conversation.
Well, and I'm sure that's some of why you keep coming back. I mean, you feel appreciated. You see the change, right, in the kids, and parents tell you, kids tell you, and so it keeps you coming back. It keeps you getting too burned out, right? So thank you for that. So let's go to now Miss Ferguson. Miss Ferguson, you have a girl empowerment group. Talk a little bit about that. I was reminded that you started it 5 years ago, which amazes me. Can you talk about why you felt the need to start the group, and then how it's developed from there?
Yes. I started a girls empowerment and self-worth group. I want them to, in a mentoring group. I saw the need when we were at the Dallas campus, and it was something that we see all the time. A young lady walks in, and she flopped in the chair, and she kind of sat with her legs, instead of like a ladylike, she sat open and kind of just, just sat there. And I thought in my mind, okay, these are young ladies. They need to present themselves as young ladies. There's a time and a place if you're playing athletics or if you're walking up straight like a young lady. And so that's what triggered it. More so is just the lack of self-esteem and self-worth that I saw. So we work on a lot of self-worth projects, activities. I want these ladies to know that they are worth something. All young people are worth something, but a lot of times you have the young ladies who, young ladies are more emotional, and they listen to every little thing that someone says. They could not be talking directly to you, but they hear, oh, you're not pretty because you don't have makeup on. You wear glasses. And they take it to heart, and it lowers their self-worth. So I wanted to be there and do something to help them build up their confidence, know their self-worth, and we do so many other activities, and that's what started it. Now, starting it in 5 years ago, this will be my 5th year, I've seen changes. I do it from grades 6 and up. And I've seen lots of changes. One story that I would like to say is my first year. We talked about all these things that I've just said, and I had one young lady come to me, and she was crying, and she sat down. She said, "Miss Ferguson, I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." She was bawling her eyes out. Her friends were upset with her. She broke up with her boyfriend, and her friends were giving her a hard time because they were telling her, "Oh, he's good for you," and all this stuff. She thought about everything that we had learned in these classes and told me, she says, "I know my worth. He called me a name that I'm not, so I broke up with him." And it made me proud at that moment. When she walked out, I'm very emotional, and I cried because I knew if I reached that one girl, then it made a difference.
And you've personally sacrificed. You live in Mesquite, and I offered you an opening in Mesquite, and second year or something that you had the girl group, and you refused to leave the girls.
I started the girls group in Dallas, but then when I moved to the Plano campus, and I had already been there several years with these girls, I couldn't leave them. They're my children. So
that's, again, it's these kids who make it, oftentimes make it because of somebody who, in this case, sacrificed distance so that they could continue the guidance.
Well, they're definitely worth it. All the kids are, but knowing the group that I have and knowing some of the backgrounds and some of the conversations that we have, we do have a motto in our group. What we talk about in the group between us stays here. It's not to be gossiped outside. And I also tell them, unless it's something that I know is going to hurt you or hurt somebody else, that I have to report it, then I will. Other than that, these are conversations. These girls have become so comfortable with each other that they open up and they talk to each other about many things that have sometimes caught me off guard. But they do it.
Yeah. It's good that our young people, especially our middle schoolers, have a safe space, because life in school can be tough, especially at that age. It's always been tough at the middle school, but it's especially tougher now that you have cyberbullying and just other additional ways that during my time and your time weren't available to hurt kids. We have new tools where kids can hurt kids. So having a place to learn how to deal with that in a dignified way is imperative.
Yes.
I just wish everybody would have their kids in programs like this. So, Bree, talk a little bit about what you guys do.
So in girls group, we basically talk about how to get our self-esteem up and how to be a lady and what's proper and what's not proper. And it's pretty cool considering this is my 2nd year. When I first joined, I joined kind of late, like when it was about to be the fashion show. What really caught my attention was the fashion show part. And I'm the type to be girly girl at times, but when it's like about fashion stuff, I really enjoy it because like I like to have style and stuff like that. Miss Ferguson, she's a really nice person. She'll help you when you're down, or when she tells me that I'm beautiful every day. If I look sad or something, she'll be like, Bria, remember what you're worth and that you're beautiful and stuff like that. And I really appreciate her for that.
Well, I'm glad that you have Miss Ferguson saying that to you. I wish all of our adults in every building said that to every kid every day. We need to get better at that, but at least you've got one. And so, talk about some of the people that have come to visit with you guys.
There's people that are sad and that just really need help, and she helps them pretty well. And you don't see that every day in our school. You see people that are sad and stuff, but if for females that are sad and are going through a lot of things at home or something, you can come to girls group and talk it out with her and tell people what you're going through, and they'll give you their opinion. Well, not a rude opinion to help you, just a nice opinion and things like that. Okay,
thank you. Ms. Ferguson, talk about some of the speakers that you have that have popped in.
Yes, since we're pretty much new this year, last year we've had nutritionists come in. We've had, we've had Dr. Good come in before because I wanted them to see that women can be in power, and Dr. Good is in a powerful position, being a superintendent of a school. I've had somebody come in to show them how to do interviewing. We've had mock interviews, and just recently we had a lady from her group is called Divas Build Futures. Her name is Aisha Scott. She came in and did a wonderful job with the girls. They actually, before I could even invite her back, the girls had invited her back. She did a wonderful job with the girls, and she does kind of what I do, but on a much bigger scale.
And I think she's wanting to come in and sort of intertwine. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, actually, we've worked together on several things. We have the same goal, the same perspective for these young ladies, and we've worked together. She actually had an event last Saturday that she worked closely with, and we kind of worked together on that. But she is going to be coming in more often to speak with the girls group on different topics, whatever the topic we may come across. And I know that we do or would like to have her come into our school to speak to some of the older girls. My group is open from grades 6 and up. I usually get the girls from 6th, 7th, 8th, and some 9th graders. I would love for some of the older girls to come in, and that's where I'm utilizing her to help me to get those girls, because she works with older girls as well. So hopefully she can come in and speak to some of the older girls, maybe on rotation day, maybe on another, some other time. But I would love to have her come back.
Right. You had mentioned that maybe she would bring some of her kids to mentor.
Yes, she has some of the older girls that she's mentored. Some of them are age 20, 21, 22, and around that age. Mm-hmm. And she's going to be bringing some of those young ladies in to speak with our girls. And we are looking forward to partnering as well towards the end of the year at our fashion show. And that is one of our big events that everybody looks forward to. The girls look forward to it. And sometimes that's what catches their attention, why they want to come join the group. And then they end up getting more out of it than just thinking about the fashion show.
Yeah, you got to have a hook.
That's a good hook, because it's a lot of fun.
So let me go back to Professor Freedom, because one of the things that we didn't really touch on was the fact that you also are working with families during the summer.
Yes,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Research shows that sometimes students, they lose, there's a gap, if you will.
Summer slide.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And that we need to do those things, and we encourage parents who we say are the first educators, first of all, that the home is a place where education begins. We support that process as institutions. During the summer, over the years, we've had an excellent relationship with DART, where we have had the opportunity to take students' families free of charge, where we educate them on how to ride DART, the trains, etc. And then we have gone on trips such as to the Dallas Museum of Arts. Then we go to Clyde Warren Park and have a great time. And these places, some of them have never been. We also go to SMU, where I was a professor, was director of multicultural education, and then we've gone to places like the Audubon Center and places where during the summer we enrich their summer experience. And I'll just give you a real compliment to the scholars. We went to the Bush Library one summer, and we always have folders. I think they know about those Professor Freedom folders. I've kind of known that they have folders as scholars.
There's no such thing as a free trip anywhere with you, right? They have to pay for it with work.
They have to pay for it with work, and they have to take the chains off their brains, let their minds start working. And so they went in, and they were sitting on the floor, and they were asking. I had already talked to them about docents and people in the Bush Library, and they were looking at the ceilings and the ladies came up and said they have seen many students come through the Bush Library, and I sent you that text years ago, and they said she had not seen a group as behaved and as focused as these young people were, and taking notes with their folders open, asking questions, etc.
And I love the fact that you take the parents with you.
Yes,
the
and
parents are able to go.
The parents are going, yes.
Yeah,
and we're going to be growing that program this year. As a matter of fact, we're starting now working on the summer. I've already talked to parents, not just those in my after school programs, but we're going to put the announcements out early, the flyers to the parents, beginning to build a summer program up, so that by the time the summer arrives, we would have built those numbers up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because with what you do, we never get. Well, I'm never satisfied with any numbers. Because I always want everybody there.
We want a full bus. We want that's what we want.
Well,
we want the bus full.
We do.
And maybe even if 2 buses are necessary.
There you go.
We want people to be excited about this, because the other thing is that we're exposing students. And the more exposure we give them beyond the classroom,
That's right.
the greater their education.
You're exactly right. Anybody ever go on any of the summer programs in here? You might want to put that on your calendar for next summer. Yeah. If you're not working, you're getting up there, and Alex.
And I just say, and Alex, for an example, he went to Mexico. I remember that.
That's true.
Yes, I remember his mother and I were talking, and I never should forget, watching him grow up and seeing where he is today, and knowing that he was in Mexico and his experience there that summer, and with Dominic, when his father came, this was very intentional, and he mentioned about his father knowing and not knowing, but his father was very intentional, his mother wanting to put them into the program. And that's what is exciting about me, the parent involvement.
Sure.
And the parents who came to you and said, we want our kindergartens and first graders with Professor Freedom. And here we are. Yeah. And now we have 25 and 30 in our sessions.
Yep. So I know that we've had a comfortable chat, but we've come towards the end of the show. And so it is time for you to think about a question to ask me before we end. Anybody ready with a question that you want to ask me?
Actually, I am.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, what inspired you to make such a school? Because, you'll see public schools and some private schools that just don't have the moral values and want, like, the founding principles that Legacy does.
Well, thanks for asking that. I was monitoring the lowest performing middle schools and high schools in Dallas ISD for several years. And in essence, I was watching schools do school wrong. And it was my job to help them get past those practices and get them off the bad list. And we did. I was part of Dr. Hinojosa's superintendent learning community, and there were 4 team leaders, and I was one. And we would fan out to the worst schools. And over 3.5 years, we got all 14 of the worst middle schools and high schools off the bad list. So being part of that helped me see what worked and what didn't work in schools. While I was doing that, somebody came to me and said, we have a friend who is working on a charter application, and we need somebody who can write the educational vision part of the application, because there's 3 parts to the charter application: finance and legal, and then the education mission and vision. So I said, sure, because I didn't, I'd been in the school ISD business for 25 years. I'd been a college professor for several years already, and so I was ready for that challenge. And I wrote what turned out to be a very well-researched but hard to implement instructional practices that we have to work with our teachers on all the time, putting in PBL and dual language with English, Spanish, and Chinese, and engineering as elementary, and 100% PBL K-12, and STEM in the upper grades. All of that, most schools only do one of those things. We do all of them. And so making sure that our teachers are well trained and comfortable being able to instruct you all well in those areas, that's been our work. But that's a good question. Thanks for asking.
Good answer.
Oh, thank you. Ree?
My question is, people say one school is better than the other, or this school is better than the other, and teachers leave and come back, and teachers go to another campus and they come back. How do you deal with all the confusion and chaos between the teachers and the campus?
That's a really good question. So because charters tend not to pay as much because we don't get paid as much as an ISD, we have normally less experienced teachers or no experience. A lot of times we have people that we're training to be a teacher as they're there. And because our training has to be very extensive with the programs that we have, we spend a lot of time with high quality training. These new teachers don't understand that the world that we try to create at Legacy is so supportive, because we want them to stay, because we want them to quickly embrace the instructional strategies we need for them to bring to you. They don't realize that when they go somewhere else, they don't get that. And so you do have cases where teachers leave us so that they can make $5,000 to $7,000 more dollars, and then they contact me within a few months and say, "Can I come back?" And so that's, and how do we deal with it? We just try to deal with it with dignity and with high class subs, and with finding additional people that we can quickly train up into doing what needs to be done. But it is our constant work to make sure that you all have people in front of you who can give you the learning that we want you to have to make those higher cognitive development decisions, because we're not training you to read books. We're training you to think about solving problems all the time. That book thing, that's old school. The new way to train kids to learn is to learn to solve problems. And so, I hate that we have teachers who sometimes have to leave us to figure out that they had a better thing with us. We try to tell them, I promise. but teachers are like students. Sometimes you have to fail forward, experience it yourself, and then want to come back. Thank you.
Dr. Good,
Yeah.
with everything that has transpired over the last year or so out in our real world, what do you think about the Me Too movement, and how do you feel that it has affected our communities?
I think that it's positive and sometimes not positive. It's positive in that there's an awareness of females as equals, and that's very positive. Sometimes I've seen female groups that take it so far that they actually put down other groups, and that's where we need to level down. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We can't be so feminine that we say men are bad, because then that creates a problem also. There's an extremism. And so I would caution females from embracing the Me Too movement to the point where we lose sight of our partnership with males.
Thank you.
Dominic?
What do you think of Legacy's future?
I think that our future is grand, and I will give some evidence. We continue to grow. We're opening up our new high school. I was just looking at furniture, 21st century furniture for the high school today. And we have robotics clubs that are now competing. The Mesquite Robotics Club will start in November. Plano had its first competition 2 weekends ago. If you want to know more, go on the Facebook page. Our Legacy Facebook page is just a marvel. I think if there was a school Facebook page competition, we would win hands down because it really reflects so much of what we do and what we care about and what's important to us. So we do have the STEM initiative, and we have a new STEM director that has been really good with helping our IT teachers and our health science teachers to step it up a bit. I want to get more hands-on materials for you all and for your teachers. I want you to know I saw about 50 boxes go out of central office today, math manipulatives to add. Because we've moved so much and because we've added grades every year, every time we buy something, then the next year it's not enough. This is the first year that we've been K-12 for the second year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so before this, we were adding teachers every year just because we were adding grades. Now we can stabilize a little bit and get our base solid so that our teachers feel more comfortable and they can take the the hands-on and higher level inquiry projects to a new higher level. Thank you for that. Excuse me. Professor Freedom.
Yes. A comment, in closing comment and question. We have our program, a gentleman's program, Ties, where we've been going to Mercedes and Ford and other places getting them for the young men, as well as you mentioned the parents earlier. So this is sort of, how could Legacy embrace the partners, DART, all the other, I'm sure people, DART, partners, and then events with parents where it's not so much meeting, but a place where, like with the partners are gathering, and they see each other, and they see the progress, and then the parents, it's almost like a social, where they're not in a meeting place, but they're in a getting to know each other and getting to know you and the staff in a more social environment.
I'm going to have to think about that. I think we're going to have to develop that. I don't think we can do it right now, but you have brought it out into a, what can we do to make our partners feel more valuable? And that's certainly important. Yeah. Well, and so you're wanting to add to the next level, not only make our partners feel valuable, but then have them meet our parents and mix into our community so that they get a sense of our community. So we're going to have to really sit down and hash that out. But thank you for that. That's a good idea. We've come to the end of this podcast. I thank you again, Alex and Bree and Miss Ferguson and Dominic and Professor Freedom. I know that you have not only highlighted some really important, culturally important practices that we're doing, but hopefully making some parents want to have their kids join your group, because we can't have too many doing, learning the things that you're teaching them every week. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.